Okay, we're going to get started. I want to thank everybody for getting here. I know that we've got people back and forth because Courts Committee has quite a big docket, and we have several people that actually serve on the Courts Committee and this committee too. So as we get going, we're going to have a presentation. If Jennifer, if you want to just step on up in that way. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we better take roll call. All those that are here vote aye on the electronic voting board.
You have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
All right. Okay, now, Jennifer, if you'd like to step forward, we'll get started with this, and hopefully we'll get some of the members back by that time.
All right. Thank you very much, Chairman Carrico, members of the committee. I'm very pleased to be here today. Again, my name is Jennifer Mitchell. I'm Director of the Department of Rail and Public Transportation. Typically, every year I come and give you all an agency update, but I know many of you are very familiar with the work that we're doing, and I have a long docket today as well. So in the interest of time, I'm going to focus primarily on work that we are doing right now related to transit funding and reforming some of our transit provisions. I do want to note that as this was actually a provision of last year's, what's referred to often as the WMATA funding bill. It really included a lot of transit reforms in there as well. It does require us to come and present to both of you, so this is why I'm here today. But I'm also happy to answer more questions about it because some of what I'm going to talk about gets a little into the weeds. But first of all, as part of this update and working through the reforms in our transit program, we have been working with a group called the Transit Service Delivery Advisory Committee, or referred to as TSDAC. We've been working with them actually for a number of years, and it includes representatives from the Virginia Transit Association, from our smaller rural transit operators, CTB members, former VML representatives, which includes some local officials, that are all helping us work through some of these issues. As we got to our working through particularly changes to our operating formula, one of the first things we did was put together a set of policy principles. And I should note the legislation, the requirement in the legislation required us to start allocating 100% of our operating funds based on performance metrics. Right now, we only allocate a portion of them based on performance metrics. This is very similar to some of the changes you've been seeing throughout the transportation program, things like Smart Scale, where we're focusing much more on outcome-based decisions based on objective data. So again, the policy objectives that we put together were really to promote fiscal responsibility and most importantly, incentivize efficient operations. But we also do want to continue to support robust transit service and higher ridership and patronage as well. The last point I do want to point out, because this is a question that's come up quite a bit, we heard resoundingly from the transit community that they did not want us to create new requirements for collecting new data that they are not already required to collect and to have to add new processes, especially for some of the smaller rural transit systems. This can be incredibly burdensome. So when we go through the performance metrics, you'll see that we've been using data that we already collect. So again, this requirement it's written in law right now. It would go into effect on July 1st of 2019 for fiscal year 20. It would impact 100% of the operating funds. And I should note as well, operating funds refer to the funding we provide a transit agency to keep their buses and their vehicles running, to pay operators, to buy fuel. This is not necessarily the same pot of funds that we also use for capital projects. So that's a little bit different. Currently, we'd use three different factors, which is passengers per revenue hour, passengers per revenue mile, net cost per passenger. And this goes all the way back to 2011, where DRPT, working with TSDAC, first put into a partially performance-based allocation measure. So where we are today, we actually briefed our CTB on this on Tuesday. We're going to request that they approve this allocation method at our February meeting. And the reason that meeting is important is because we're in the process of putting together our 6-year plan, so we need to know how we're going to allocate our funds. We also do want to provide some certainty to the transit agencies that are trying to do their budgets right now. We've prepared a draft guidance document. It has been out for public comment and is going to be out for public comment until February 3rd. We'll be bringing those comments back to the CTB in February. So without getting into too many details, this is how our current operating formula works. We have a portion of funds that are allocated strictly just based on operating costs. We call that our traditional method because that's goes back quite a few years. And then we have a portion of funds, about a third, that are allocated based on performance metrics. Now, going forward, we're going to have a single methodology for allocating all of our funds based on performance metrics. The first step in doing something like this is putting together what we call a sizing metric, which is how much of the state's funding pie should a transit agency get. What's the right measure of size? Is that ridership? Is it operating cost? Is it how many miles or hours they run? So we've put together a set of 4 different metrics that allow us to size each system. I do want to point out we have a separate sizing metric for commuter rail, particularly this is Virginia Railway Express, because commuter rail has a much different operating cost structure and ridership trends than does bus systems. So then once we figure out how much of each, the pie, again, that each system's getting, we then apply 5 different performance metrics. All of these metrics are designed to measure the efficiency and effectiveness of a transit agency's operations. These can be passengers per revenue hour, per revenue mile, operating cost for all of these different metrics. These really, the reason that we have 5 here is that it gives us the opportunity to balance the types of characteristics that are present in a lot of different systems. Across Virginia, we have small rural systems, we have urban systems that carry a lot of people over short distances, we have commuter-based systems that carry people just in peak periods over long hauls. And so these factors, because there's 5 of them, allow us to balance a lot of those different factors out. We then we saw that some of the smaller agencies, which actually have low cost structures and pretty high ridership increases, were seeing spikes in their operating assistance. So what we did was we placed a cap on that. So no one system can get any more than 30% of their operating costs covered by state assistance. And we take that money and run it back through the formula, and then that's how much everybody gets. So. We did recommend, and I should say that TSDAC did vote unanimously to approve this scenario. This was the result of many months of work and probably dozens and dozens of scenarios that were run. It was a very inclusive process. All of the data we provided to our stakeholders. We gave them Excel spreadsheets so they could run their own numbers. And again, I was very pleased that TSDAC did approve this unanimously. We have proposed a 1-year transition period where we would actually use a different formula that sort of would ease us into the full formula the year after. There was a difference of opinion between us and TSDAC. TSDAC had asked for a 2-year transition period. We are recommending to the CTB a 1-year transition period. And this is just the formula that we would use that would be a little bit different. We are actually putting more emphasis on operating cost and less on ridership. That has the result of, again, minimizing some of the impacts to any agency. So with that, I should note as well, when we've gone through and looked at, we have 39 transit systems in Virginia that are affected by this. And because there's no new funding here, this is somewhat of a zero-sum game, that we knew from the outset that there were going to be winners and losers. And that's why we have these policy principles that we established, and we use these policy principles to evaluate all of our options. 9 of the 39 agencies would be negatively impacted by this, but the amount of that impact is, for each of these, it's less than 2% of their total operating budget. So for most of those systems that are negatively impacted, it's actually less than 1% of their operating budget. So we're very sensitive to the fact that our people are doing their budgets right now, that they may need transitional assistance so that we can get through year 1. But I do also want to emphasize that we've tried to come up with a system that's very fair, equitable, and not too disruptive to any of the transit agencies across the state. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Does anyone on the committee have questions? All right, hearing none. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
I'm sure we'll be talking in the next couple of weeks.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we're going to get started with the committee, and as we do each year, we have new pages this year, and if I could just have each one of the pages step up and introduce yourself, and then we'll have an introduction of the committee.
Hi, I'm Jack Vogel, and I go to the Hill School, and I live in Fauquier County.
Hi, I'm Nathan Bennett. I go to Montgomery County and Christiansburg Middle School.
All right. And our clerks are seated in front of us, Chad Starzer and new Catherine Dent. And of course, we are glad that our attorney, Beth Jamerson, decided to come back and help out with us this year in the committee. So I appreciate everyone recognizing our staff and our attorneys, because without them, the committee wouldn't be able to operate effectively. As we move through the docket, there are several things that we're going to have on the docket. I think we have a little over 60 bills in this committee, and we're going to try to move through at least 20 or so each committee. So if you have a bill before the committee and you ask for a continuance, you're taking some jeopardy there, because we may not get up to it if because of this being a short session. We're going to start out. I know Senator McDougal is signed up to be first on the list. If you could get him a message that as soon as he gets over here, we're going to take those bills up. And also, Senator Stewart is on the list next. So we'll go down the list of those that are here. And I think Senator Black, you're the first one up that's in place to move forward.
Well, I love this. This is a good deal. Let me start with Senate Bill 1468, which deals with transfer of the analysis authority to NVTA. Ladies and gentlemen, we have two authorities set up. There's one in Hampton Roads and there's one in Northern Virginia, whose task is to allocate funds that come in as a result of House Bill 2313. The tax monies from that come in, and then the General Assembly has laid out a very complex set of rules for allocating how we weight each individual project that's proposed by the various jurisdictions. And what this bill does, to a certain extent, it's a bit of a cleanup bill. It only addresses NVTA, Northern Virginia Transportation Authority, and it streamlines the current project analysis project, or process rather, by basically what happens right now is VDOT does the project analysis, and then it goes over to the authority, and the authority has to relook it. This seemed practical when we first set it up, but there are a total of 350 projects, much bigger than VDOT ever anticipated. They are anxious to have it shift over to NVTA, and NVTA is anxious to get it. So moving it over will streamline the process, make it much more efficient. The other thing is that
so you're saying that VDOT wants to move it over
that's
to
correct.
NVTA.
Move it to NVTA. So that's the one big thing that it does. And the other thing is that the General Assembly approved a bill for Hampton Roads that allowed the administrative costs of the authority to be financed through revenues that come into the authority rather than by billing the various localities. And what this bill does is really the same thing exactly as what was done for the Hampton Roads Transportation Accountability Commission. And I think this is a very good move because one of the unintended consequences of the funding structure has been that some local governments, which, we try to divide up the money so that each jurisdiction gets some portion of it. There actually are some of the jurisdictions that owe more money in administrative costs to the Transportation Authority than they receive in funds back. So they end up with a net loss, whereas they're actually supposed to be getting back a portion of the taxes that they contribute to. We have a number of folks here from the business community, and Tracy, I'm not sure where, if you would like to step forward. I think that pretty well lays it out. We've got a number of people from the business community. As far as we know, there is no opposition to it, and a tremendous amount of support in Northern Virginia for the bill. So, Tracy, I don't know whether you have anything to add to that.
Tracy Bannett on behalf of the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority. I'm just here to answer questions if you have any.
So, real quick, is Senator Black bringing it on your behalf or on VDOT?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, he is.
Okay. All right. Can you just by a raise of hands show you're here for the, okay, in support? All right. All right. Is there anyone in the audience in opposition? All right. Just real quick question from VDOT if they're here.
Mr. Chairman, Emmett Heltzel from the department. You had a question for me?
Yeah, just your opinion on this, on streamlining this and taking it.
I think the senator has laid out the purpose of the bill quite succinctly. I'm not going to take away from anything he said there. We have no official position on it this time.
Okay.
But I won't take away from anything he stated.
All right. All right. Thank you. Senator Black, you have anything else you'd like to add?
I think that's about it.
All right. Any questions from members of the committee? All right. Hearing none. All right. Senator Favola. Oh, is there a second? All right. There's a motion and a second that we report Senate Bill.
Mr. Chairman, I apologize. There is a line amendment, and I should have mentioned that. Do you have the line amendment?
I don't see any amendments here. All right, Beth, if you could report that amendment.
Line 196, after near, delete the Northern Virginia Transportation District, insert Planning District 8.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'll explain the amendment.
Please.
It's a technical amendment. Out of abundance of carefulness, our attorneys wanted to refer to Planning District 8 rather than the language that's currently in the bill before you.
Okay. Any problem with that amendment that you see at this point? Okay. All right, the amendment's for us. Is there a motion on the amendment? It's been moved and seconded that we adopt amendment to Senate Bill 1468. All in favor say aye. All opposed. And you renew your motion to report as amended and seconded. All right, the bill's before us as amended. Is there, all those in favor will vote aye on the electronic voting board.
Ten ayes, 0 nays.
All right, 10 ayes, 0 nays. Bill's reported.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next one is Senate Bill 1044. This was submitted at the request of Loudoun County. I'm not sure whether, is Jeff Gore? You might just step up here with me. Basically, this is a Christmas tree bill. What it does is it allows parking tickets to be issued by law enforcement officers other than uniformed employees of the locality. And it's basically makes it easier to issue traffic tickets. Not that I'm a great fan of traffic tickets, but it's something that has to be done. There already has been permission given to do this to Augusta, Bath, and Rockingham counties, and this simply adds Loudoun County to the list.
All right.
Is that
Mr. Chairman,
Essentially
committee members, just about a couple clarifications. Jeff Gore on behalf of Loudoun County. So this statute, current law allows localities to adopt parking ordinances. It's not traffic violations, it's just parking ordinances. Under current law, any locality can adopt a parking ordinance and they can enforce it with law enforcement or city or county or town staff. Under current law, for cities over 40,000 in population, they can also procure a contract vendor to do that service if they deem it to be more efficient resources of local dollars. So that's all the bill does, is it puts counties over 40,000 in population in the same posture as cities. So, for example, City of Richmond does this. City of Virginia Beach does this. Loudoun can't do it. Fairfax can't do it. Hanover can't do it. Chesterfield can't do it. So it just puts counties over 40,000 in the same position as those cities.
So how many counties would qualify under this?
How many counties? I'm going to phone my VACO friend, I think. Joe.
Mr. Chairman, Joe Lurch with Virginia Association of Counties, also speaking in support of the bill for the same reasons stated. And just note that also it's an efficiency measure. Rather than having law enforcement going out and doing the parking enforcement, it's just an option localities can do. And as Jeff stated, you could see that in some of our urban cities. Just ballparking it, I would have to imagine there's maybe 20 or so counties at least. But if you want, I can get you in a few minutes more detail on how many counties that would be.
Okay. Any other questions of the patron or anyone that's spoke? Senator Suderline.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I was looking at, I remember that we had this bill last year for Albemarle with the same sort of idea, similar approach at least. At the bottom of the existing text, it says that Chesterfield, and this might just be a reading comprehension question someone else can help me with, but it says that Chesterfield or James City County, pursuant to this section, shall be subject to a civil penalty not to exceed $75. But is there any limit imagined for what we're going to allow all these other jurisdictions to, how high they can go with their fee or civil penalty?
But
The bill doesn't change.
Beth, is
the bill does not say that.
qualify that? I think that would be.
I understand, yeah, Mr. Chairman, I understand that the bill doesn't change that, but because it looks like, we started off with a few counties, and at that time it said this is what we're going to do with those jurisdictions. I just want to know if we're going to envision a maximum ceiling for, because we're going to add a lot of localities right now.
As you heard, it'll include 20 or more.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to include localities that I might park in.
Yep.
So,
I would have no objection at all to applying that across the board.
I'm not sure.
Well, Mr. Chair,
Senator Deeds.
right now there's no limit in cities theoretically, and I would suggest that if you park and you obey the law and you park where you're supposed to, you're not going to have a problem. And localities have to adopt ordinances. They have to hold public hearings and go through the same process we do when we vote on bills. So I would think that, you know, we ought to trust our localities with this.
Mr. Chairman, I do have some more information. 27 counties, over 40,000 in population. My hunch is most of those don't have the need for parking ordinances. Again, localities already have this authority. It's just how they choose to enforce it. So they can do it now, any locality, with their own staff or with law enforcement. In Loudoun County, the county doesn't want to have to deploy its sheriff's deputies to enforce parking meters around the new metro stops. That's the genesis of it.
They already have the authority.
They already have.
Going to let private.
Correct.
Mr. Chairman, may I speak to that?
Senator Sutherland.
That's part of the concern is right now when it's local governments that and these employees report to officials who have to stand for election, they will hear about the complaints. When you have a entity that is not accountable to the voters at any point, but has a financial incentive to write as many tickets, I think that we have a perverse incentive. I'd also, since I've got the microphone, saying, if we're going to trust folks, I had folks last year when I carried the felony threshold bill that said, why does it matter what the felony threshold is? You just shouldn't steal. And, it's the same with parking. I think sometimes people make innocent parking mistakes, and I don't want to be reading about people that have a private enterprise with the profit motive, going after them for a big way. So I think that since we're exploring this and we're going to take it to a lot more localities, we ought to consider a limit. I mean, I think James City County and Chesterfield haven't come back saying $75 is too much. So I think that that's something we ought to consider for everyone.
All right. Are you doing that in the form of a motion?
If council could drop an amendment to that purpose, which I'm sure she ably can.
If you would like to adopt it in concept,
I
I
make
can.
that motion.
Mr. Chairman, I have no objection to that. I lean in that direction myself.
All right. Can you report what that? All right. So if you want to clarify what your amendment will be, and then we'll see if there's a second.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The goal of the amendment is to take the $75 maximum across to all jurisdictions going forward.
Okay. Is there a second? All right. It's been moved and seconded that $75, the civil penalty not to exceed $75 on line 43 would be applied to all the counties that are included in this legislation.
Mr. Chair.
Any clarification to that?
Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Well, okay, so we're gonna have to let staff work on that language. Not sure if that would be a civil penalty or not. So we're gonna let her work that out in concept as to what the gist of the amendment would be. So, did you have a question, Senator McClellan?
I do, and I guess
To the amendment?
yes. I would be curious to see what VML or VACO or some of the localities that currently have civil penalties that are set and could be incorporated in budget decisions by those localities, and what impact this limitation could have on those budget decisions. I think that's important information for us to have before we vote on that amendment.
All right. VACO.
Mr. Chairman, Joe Lurch with VACO. To the senator's question, just looking at it now, I mean, this is kind of a curveball here because there could be other instances, particularly with handicap parking, where the fee could be higher for legitimate reasons. So, do have concerns about making this line amendment without understanding the full impacts, but still support the original bill, which is to just grant that choice of a locality, same as a city or county, same as the city. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? All right, have the amendment properly seconded before us. All in favor of the amendment, say aye. All opposed? All right, how many noes? 2 noes. All right, the amendment's adopted. Now we have the bill before us as amended. Is there a motion on the bill as amended?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I will move to report the amended bill if we're in the posture for that.
All right, there's a motion to report as amended. Is there a second? There's a motion and a second to report the bill as amended. All in favor, vote aye on electronic voting board.
Eight ayes, 3 nays.
Bill reports 8-3.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all that I have.
Senator McDougal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you put that shot clock back up, I'm happy to stay within the bounds of that time.
I will do that.
Mr. Chairman, we'll expect that back in courts here shortly. Mr. Chairman, Senate Bill 1382 comes from Committee on District Courts in conversations with the Supreme Court. Right now, you have a traffic offense and a criminal offense in the same statute. The court wants to be able to have people pre-play or comply with law under the traffic infractions, which they would not be able to do under the criminal infraction or criminal finding. So this would separate them out into different code sections.
All right. Before we go forward, is this something you serve on the courts committee, that a decision the committee in courts would have to deal with before this committee acts on it?
This is a committee on district courts, which is made up of the Chief Justice, judges from the district courts, juvenile and general district, members of the House and members of the Senate. And I think there's some individuals from clerk's offices, or they're just advisory in the advisory there. So it's not the Courts of Justice Committee, it's the Committee on District Courts. Okay. And certainly this could go to the Courts Committee. I don't have any objection, but I don't know that this is a policy change. This is more of a technical, logistical change to try to ensure that citizens can take care of their matters, and because there is a difference between the infraction of registration and licensing versus titling, and that's what we're trying to make clear. The criminal, one section, the non-criminal in a different section.
Right. Any questions of the patron? Anyone here like to speak in favor of the bill?
Mr. Chairman, the Supreme Court is here if you have any more specific questions.
Okay. Anyone like to speak in opposition? Hearing none. Anyone on the committee? Is there a motion? It's been moved and seconded to report Senate Bill 1382. All in favor, vote aye on the electronic voting board.
$11 ayes, 0 nays.
Bill reports 11-0.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I did stay within the shot clock.
You did.
Thank you.
Senator Stewart, you may want to just pass by your handheld device for the day to look at this amendment so that you know it's in line with what we were discussing earlier.
Mr. Chairman, is there any way I could maybe just pass by for a minute and sit?
Yeah, we can do that.
There are a lot.
If you want to take up the 2 bills that you and Senator Reeves have, and we can discuss those, and
I would appreciate that because I think there are a fair amount of folks here on the hands-free bill.
Okay. All right. Let's just start with your bill that's with Senator Reeves, and we'll just take you both at the same time. That way we can make the proper. Is any preference who rolls into who?
We're typically going with the lower number, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
I think,
So we're going to do a substitute. We're going to roll Senate Bill 1338 into Senate Bill 1183. Is there a motion on that? It's been moved and seconded that we roll Senate Bill 1180 or 1338 into 1183 and show Senator Reeves as chief co-patron. And all in favor say aye. All opposed? All right. We don't have to vote electronically on that. Okay, voice vote. It's good for a voice vote. All right. So now we have Senate Bill 1183 before us, dealing with free use of certain toll facilities. And I'll say to this committee that if this bill is looked favorably upon, it probably needs to go to finance because there is some fiscal impact because of the non-collection of the tolls that will result from this bill.
Mr. Chairman, I've not gotten the fiscal impact statement back on this yet. I look for it. But but the chairman is right, I'm certain, because if particularly on the hot lanes, it could be a compensation event, so I'm sure it has to go to finance to be re-reviewed. And Mr. Chairman, that's the gist of the bill. Currently, we allow certain emergency services personnel to not pay tolls, but not all of them, and this brings the others in under that so that they can use them free as well. The tolls obviously increase the cost of the emergency services, and healthcare is so expensive. We're trying to do everything we can to keep those costs down, and this is just one little part of it.
All right. Senator Reeves, you want to speak?
I think Senator Stewart summarized the Virginia Ambulance Association is here because some of their members are here and they're licensed EMS agencies, so they're paying those tolls. So they're here to speak on behalf if you need to hear from them, but that's the bill. It's a simple bill.
Yeah, I'll be happy to hear from them if they want to briefly speak.
My name is Gary Dalton. I'm from Valley Medical Transport, part of Valley Health in Winchester, Virginia.
And I'm Kevin Dillard with Life Care Medical Transports. I'm the current president, and Gary is the immediate past president of the Virginia Ambulance Association. And I just wanted to bring to you all's attention on the hot lanes, we're already exempted from the tolls on that. So we're just trying to get the other tolls incorporated so that all ambulances will have the same access.
So you already have that exemption on one portion, the hot lanes?
Yes, sir. Correct.
Okay. All right. Any questions from the witnesses? All right. Thank you. Anyone in the audience like to speak in opposition? All right. Hearing none, we have Senate Bill 1183 that in the form of a substitute that rolls 1338 into it before us. Is there a motion? All right, it's been moved and seconded that we report Senate Bill 1183. All in favor, vote aye on electronic voting board. Somebody have the
11 ayes, 0 nays.
All right, the bill's approved 11-0. If you want to take just a few minutes to look over what I handed you so that you can make sure that that's where you're wanting to go with that, then we'll take up a bill and then you can come back.
Do you want to take Senate Bill 1181, which I have 3 today, actually.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, you do.
Mr.
Yes,
Chairman,
we'll take that one up real quick.
Senate Bill 1181, I think Senator Serval has a bill just like it, and am I the lower number?
Yep.
I'm the lower
You're the low number again.
That one too. So I think he'd like to have his rolled in and we be listed as joint chief co-patrons as well.
All right, is there a motion to roll Senate Bill 1536 into Senate Bill 1181?
So moved.
Showing each as chief co-patrons. It's been motioned. Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. Senate Bill 1536 rolling to 1181, showing both patrons as chief co-patrons. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, we have Senate Bill 1181 dealing with out-of-state convictions on drug offenses of restricted driver's license.
Very simply, Mr. Chairman, there was a hole in the code. If you got an out-of-state conviction where you lost your license, that you didn't have the ability to petition in Virginia, if you lived in Virginia, to get a restricted driver's license, and this would fix that. DMV, if you like the bill, and it's just, one of the General District Court judges brought it to my attention, who I think maybe have discovered it. They brought it up at the judicial conference. DMV had a suggestion with regard to essentially the statutory section you would proceed under. Is this the substitute they proposed? I've talked with the judges, and they're fine with the substitute that DMV has proposed, and I think DMV likes it better. And Rick Holcomb is here. I don't know if he wants to speak about it, but I'm fine with the substitute if y'all like the bill.
All right,
Move the substitute, Mr. Chairman.
is there a motion on the substitute Senate Bill 1181? There's a motion. Is there a second? Is there a second? Motion and second. All in favor say aye. All opposed? Okay, now we have the substitute. Okay, this one now moves from 46.2 to 18.2.
Makes it under
section of the code.
18.2 instead of 46, which they thought was important, so.
Okay.
It does the same thing, just a different section.
All right. All right, any questions of the patron on the substitute? Senator Marsden. They're in the United States.
They're in the United States. Yes. Would you like to address that question? I would love to have the DMV commissioner address that question.
Mr. Chairman, Senator, what that refers to is a U.S. district court. So, for instance, if you have a conviction on the GW Parkway right now, you can't get a restricted driver's license. So that's what it means, a U.S. district court.
So we're trying to be all-encompassing here.
Senator Marsden.
It would
Federal?
be out of state. Yes, sir. It would be out of state. And that's what we're trying to cure. So if it's out of state, at least that the language did do that.
Senator Marsden.
Mr. Chairman, it just said the plain language, or any person who has been convicted under the laws of another state or the United States. It just seems to me that might be a little hole there that we could close.
Is it necessary to say, or the District of Columbia? I'd ask staff, Mr. Chairman, do we need to include or the District of Columbia in that language?
It would certainly be an issue in our part of the world.
Yeah.
This is the language. Right.
Yeah, Senator Cosgrove was mentioning we may have to add Puerto Rico and.
Yeah, I don't think we do that anywhere else. I mean, we've got
this is standard
DUI
language.
laws and other things, and this is.
So this is standard language that the courts recognized over the years that.
So state would include District of Columbia?
Well,
term
no.
state.
Well, yes, but no, because they're not a state yet, and I understand that. But I still think the language covers them because we recognize it as an out-of-state conviction.
That's what the code, that's how the code currently defines state.
State, when applied to a part of the United States, including any of the 50 states, the District of Columbia, the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, Guam, the Northern Mariana
So Title I, yeah.
It's entitled. Virgin
So we're covered.
You're fine, Senator Marsden.
All right, there we go.
All right, so any other questions?
Thank you.
All right, there's a motion, and is there a second to report the substitute of Senate Bill 1181? Is there a second? Okay. Get some coffee up here on this thing so we can get some answers. All right, there's a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Or no, vote aye.
$11 ayes, 0 nays.
All right, bills are reported 11-0. Now, Senator Stewart, do you want to take a minute to talk about this?
Look at this and
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Ruff.
Senate Bill
1254 is before you at the request of the Logging Association. They currently do not have the right to use flashing amber lights on the road, but they want to use them because of the safety issues. If you follow a logging truck occasionally, it will release a little bit of bark here and there, and if you're right behind it, it might scare you a little bit. They think it's for safety purposes for themselves and for the public at large, and I would ask that you pass it.
So are you saying their bark's worse?
Bark might be worse than bite, yes.
Okay. Does anyone in the audience like to speak to the bill?
Good morning, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Ron Jenkins, Virginia Executive Director for the Virginia Loggers Association, And the members voluntarily came forth with this idea. Some actually installed some warning amber lights on the back of their log trucks, and then they found out that it was not legal to do so. They believe that this additional cost to their fleet is well worth it to them. We'd like to have the option to do it, not mandatory, but have the authority to do it for those members that would like to do so. And we believe the increase in safety to the entire motorists and our public highways is well worth it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bishop.
Mr. Chairman.
Welcome back.
Members of the committee, Dylan Bishop on behalf of the Virginia Forestry Association, and we support this bill.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Susan Seward with the Virginia Forest Products Association. We also support the bill. Thank you.
All right. Does anyone in the audience like to speak in opposition? All right, there's a motion. Is there a second to report the bill? Moved second that we report. All right. So I asked the same question. Can we name the one that don't have an amber light? That's there are quite a few out there. That's for sure. We'll get there. Maybe next year. There's a motion and second that we report the bill. Senate Bill 1254. All in favor, vote aye on the electronic voting board.
Bill 11 ayes, 0 nays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Senator Barker, I don't see Senator McPike, so.
He was here earlier. He ran out to another place, but he did say he would be back.
Sure, he'll be back.
Yes, so. All right, I have two bills before the committee today. The first is Senate Bill 1335, which deals with increasing the fee for the annual safety inspections that are done. Right now, the fee is $16, of which $15.50 go to the station doing the inspection, and 50 cents goes to the state police for supervision on that. This bill simply proposes to increase that total to $20, and we'll keep the 50 cents for the state police as their share of the fee there. I don't pretend that this comes anywhere near covering what the actual cost of doing the inspections is. It roughly takes about a half an hour for each inspection there. This would still be below what the actual cost is, but at least would reduce a little bit the losses that are incurred by the stations that are doing this. This fee has not been increased since 2006, so 13 years since the last increase, and it certainly seems to be reasonable to do this. And interestingly, the percent of inspections in which a vehicle fails is actually pretty high. It's 20% of all vehicle inspections. So this is a program that does identify problems on vehicles, and in effect, and it indirectly gets them cured there. So answer any questions, and my understanding is this bill needs to go to finance if it's
the letter I just received today said, yes. Please send Senator Barker's bill.
Well, since you and I both sit on the Transportation Subcommittee of Finance, we can take a look at it again if we get it up there. So.
Right. So is anyone on the committee have any questions of Senator Barker? Does everyone understand that this is not to be, that this is to go to finance because of a financial impact of the increase in the inspection?
Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Senator Favola.
This does have some impact upon how many service stations and other types of operators are out there that provide the service, because they are losing money on this operation. They do it for a variety of reasons, and this will at least help cut down on those losses.
But this doesn't impact the ability of the state police to have more inspectors to test those individuals to get them certified. It just goes to the actual mechanic.
Yes.
Not mechanic, but inspector.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Cosgrove.
Mr. Chairman, I think we ought to save finance some trouble, and basically raising this fee from $16 to $20. While I understand it might be a money-losing proposition just if they all passed, these stations, when I take my car in and there's something wrong with it, believe me, they're making their money on fixing my car. So yeah, basically, I think that's a pretty big jump, and I just don't think it's the right thing to do. So I won't support the bill.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Sudaline.
I have a question, and I probably have some comments after that. The question that I have for the senator is, and it might be different in his district than it is in my district, but are you seeing many shops no longer offer this?
There clearly are some stations that used to offer it that do no longer offer that. And there are others where you will see lines of cars, particularly when you get toward the end of the month there, because of the limited supply of stations and bays in which they're doing this.
Mr. Chairman, and a comment, because in my area, I got to spend a lot of time on these issues, probably more than any other LA, because my employer at the time was a former inspector, and people knew that, and so I got to be involved. And I had a lot more people calling me, asking about how they could get involved in it with their shop. And the current law requires that, I believe, you have to be in operation for at least 6 months, because the position of the Commonwealth has been that these are profitable and that we didn't want people going in strictly for this. So that might be something that you all might want to look at, and that could benefit your area, because in my area, and I imagine in Senator Cosgrove's, it sounded like there's not a shortage of inspectors. And when you point out the 20% failure rate, I know it's a significant number of those folks that then have the work done at the shop, because if you don't have the work done at the shop, you will get to meet a member of law enforcement if you drive anywhere else. So that's why I can't support the increase. And if there's an issue, and I understand, I could see it being a different situation in your district. I think there are other avenues rather than increasing the fee statewide.
Senator Barker, do you have anybody here who want to speak in favor of this?
Anybody it was the they're not here.
When you got to look around the room,
Ralph will talk for you.
Well,
yes, it was actually the gas station association, owners association, is the one that came to me with his proposal.
I understand the methodology behind it. My objection. There's got to be a dedicated revenue source when we do this. The problem that exists a lot of times is the fact that you've got these guys who run the program in the state police that are stretched so thin, trying to get these individuals tested and certified that eliminates a number of inspectors in those regions, and your bill doesn't direct anything to them for that purpose. And
right, and certainly, we could take a look at that in finance if this bill does go up to finance in terms of what the distribution is and how we ensure that the state police have the type of personnel they need to oversee the program and implement it.
Okay. Any opposition to the bill? All right. Well, I know the opposition up here. I'm looking at the audience. All right. Anyone on the committee want to make a motion? Just keep in mind, whatever the motion will be has to have straight up referral.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
I'd like to make an alternate motion to PBI.
All right. We didn't have a second to report to finance, and there's an alternate motion to PBI, and there's a second to that. So the motion on the table is to PBI Senate Bill 1335. All in favor will vote aye to PBI the bill. Trying to figure out this computer, guys.
Six ayes, 5 nays.
All right, the bill is PBI.
All right. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, the next bill I have is Senate Bill 1282. What this bill does is make it required for passengers in the rear seats of vehicles to have use their seat belts and lap belts at shoulder harnesses when they're available there in those situations. I do have, and also to make it a primary fence rather than a secondary fence. I do have an amendment to, in effect, unstrike the 3 words "and passengers in" on line 37. So I'd like to propose that amendment to be considered by the committee.
In order to get that in proper order, Beth, you want to report what that amendment would do?
Got that.
Which one? Okay. Let me find the bill first.
Page 1, line 37, after drivers of, insert "and passengers in."
All right, is there a motion on that amendment? It's been moved and seconded that we accept the amendment. All in favor say aye. All opposed? All right. Bill's before us as amended.
And just to, if I might, Mr. Chair, just to briefly provide the rationale on that, obviously, there are numerous studies showing that passengers in rear seats of vehicles are much less likely to die or to be seriously injured in crashes. We have an issue in Virginia right now, in that after years of declines in traffic fatalities, we're now seeing increasing numbers of traffic fatalities to a significant extent related to distracted driving issues. This is something that can help address that, and something that we need to do to ensure the safety of those people who are riding in vehicles in Virginia.
All right. Is there any questions of members of the committee?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Chase.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Barker, while I greatly appreciate the sentiments of the patron, as a mom who has now 4 drivers in my house, I think the thing that would concern me would be the responsibility if you have a situation where you have 18 to 20-year-olds in the car and the brothers in the back seat don't buckle up even though their mothers told them to buckle up, and the older brother in the front seat being held responsible because the younger brother in the back seat failed to listen once again to his mother. For that reason, I would not want to penalize my obedient son who is driving the car for my driver in the back seat that is not listening to his mother's advice. For that reason, yes.
Mr. Chair, I would suggest that maybe the mother needs to make sure that the driver in the front seat just says, "I'm not driving if you don't buckle up."
To that point, Mr. Chairman, when you're driving, you're facing forward and you're not looking in the back seat. If you're looking in the back seat, your eyes are not on the road, and this mother wants her kids with their eyes focused on the road. For that reason, I'm sorry I can't support your bill.
All right. Does anyone on the committee have any other questions of the patron? All right. You have someone you'd like to speak to the bill?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Georgine Blumling, and I'm here representing AAA's of Virginia. AAA is a motor company representing almost 2 million people in the Commonwealth, and our primary mission is roadway safety and motorist advocacy. As you know, motor vehicle crashes remain a leading cause of death and injury in the United States. The use of seat belts reduces that risk of injury by fatal injury by 45% in those passenger vehicles and as much as 60% in light-duty vehicles. It also reduces the risk of moderate to critical injuries by 50%. Currently, Virginia is one of only 16 states across the nation that has not moved to primary enforcement of seatbelts in front and back. All of our neighboring states have seen the wisdom of this move to reduce fatalities on our roadways. Studies show that moving to primary enforcement will raise the use rate by as much as 10 to 14%. That means where we started our 84% currently in Virginia, we would be in the mid to upper 90% use. But even more importantly than that, we could save as many as 43 lives each year simply by making this move. After many years, as Senator Barker mentioned, of decreasing in traffic fatalities in the Commonwealth, in the last 4 years, we've seen that increase start. In each year, it's gone up. Of those fatalities, 50% or higher of them are unbelted each and every year. In 2017, we lost 315 people as an unbelted occupant or driver. In 2018, the unofficial figures are 345. Properly using a seatbelt is the number one thing that will decrease fatalities on our roads, even when those crashes are from alcohol, speed, or distracted driving that we know are issues. Mr. Chairman, the Virginia Department of Motor Vehicles Highway Safety Office, the Virginia Department of Transportation, and the Virginia State Police are among many partners, including AAA and the Washington Regional Alcohol Program, that have been making moving towards zero deaths on our roads a priority for the future. Primary enforcement of seatbelt use is one strong positive step in that direction. We strongly support SB 1282, and we hope you will pass the bill. And I'm happy to address Senator Chase's concerns. Senator Chase, how old are your younger children who are in the back seat currently?
My younger children would be, I have a 16-year-old. Okay. I have an 18-year-old.
Well,
a 20-year-old.
Okay. So, excuse me for interrupting.
Sure.
Your 16-year-old being in the back would already be under our current law because they're under 18. And whoever's driving the car would be liable for them not to have a seatbelt on if they're under 18. The way our current law works for seatbelts, if they are over 18 in the front seat currently, then the passenger who does not have the belt on is responsible for the ticket, not the driver. So that may help alleviate some of those concerns.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, if I could ask a follow-up question.
Senator Chase.
How is law enforcement going to enforce a seatbelt law if we're talking about the back seat of the car and this is a primary offense?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Chase, what we find is that as all other laws that our police have to enforce is that they find ways, they are observant, and they determine how that they can best see that. Most vehicles are also now equipped with shoulder belts, which makes it easier to observe that information.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Cosgrove. All right. Is anyone else in the audience want to speak to the bill? All right. Does anyone in the audience want to speak in opposition to the bill? All right. Just a couple of observations, and then we'll take a motion on the bill. I know that in this language is listed mobile homes. Or living quarters of a motor home. I don't know that I've ever seen a motor home that had seatbelts in the living quarters. Senator Cosgrove.
I'm not sure a lot of buses have seatbelts either.
Yeah, there's several things in this section that I don't know that has those.
Mr. Chair, I think if you look at lines, the language that's incorporated additionally in here on lines 20 through 25, says starting on line 21, says rear passenger seat does not include the trunk of a passenger vehicle, the area behind the rearmost upright seat of a passenger van, station wagon, hatchback.
So it doesn't include.
So it does not include.
Okay,
those.
I got you.
And the living quarters of a mobile home, which you were referencing, is not included.
Okay.
As well as the passenger area of any bus, taxi, et cetera. So.
Got you. All right.
Those are exempt. So.
Just kind of looking at the list, didn't look at the exempt side. All right. All right. Is there a motion on the bill?
I have a motion to PBI the bill.
Moved and seconded to PBI Senate Bill 1282. Senator Cosgrove.
Senator Barker, I know that you're passionate about this, and this is no disrespect to you. I just don't think the primary offense is proper. That's the only reason that I am not supporting the bill. So, I mean, I don't want you to take anything away from that. Thank you.
All right, there's a motion and a second to PBI Senate Bill 1282. All those in favor of PBI, vote aye on the electronic voting board.
Six ayes, 5 nays.
Thank you very much.
All right, bill fails. Senator Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let's see if I can explain this. So the bill that's before the committee today is the bill that passed out of this committee last year. Oh, I'm sorry. 13, it's 1341 now, is the bill this year. Anyway, this bill passed out of this committee last year 10-4, I believe. It had overwhelming support. It went to courts of justice, or re-referred to, no, it went to the
floor and was referred back to
courts. They killed it in courts. Then what happened was Delegate Collins' bill, which is this bill that you handed me, came over, made it to the floor, and we put this bill on it, on the floor of the Senate, and this is the bill that passed the floor of that passed the Senate last year. So the bill that I have before you today is the bill that both passed this committee by a vote of 10-4, I think, and then it passed the Senate 9-4. Somebody said 9-4, and then it passed the Senate last year. There were with wide margins. Unfortunately, Senator Peterson put a rather unfortunate clause on that bill, and the whole thing ended up it all died in conference last year. So this is the bill that passed this, well, with one exception, I'm sorry. If you look on line 26, where it says the use of a handheld personal communications device.
Yeah, are you referring to the bill that you have introduced? Are you?
The bill I've introduced.
Okay.
Yes.
So we do have the bill that you introduced. It's Senate Bill 1341, and you're referring to line
26. Paragraph number 6, the use of a handheld personal communications device. Excuse me? Well, then I have the wrong bill. What bill do you all have?
We don't have a copy of a substitute that you have.
May I see what you have? Maybe that's
we have the original filed bill.
Right. Line 26, Mr. Chairman, for mine. Just line 26 is actually subsection B, numeral 3, the use of factory installed and aftermarket global positioning systems. So obviously you have a different text than we do.
Ours was offered on January 9th. That's when we had January 9th.
Okay, for year 6. All right, the only change was 3 words. In the bill that passed the Senate last year, in this bill, it said a person using a handheld personal communications device to activate, and here it says the use of a handheld communication device to activate something on the car. Other than that, the bills are identical as to what passed this committee and what passed the Senate.
All right, here's what I'm going to do. You have a different bill than what we have, and it's evidently a substitute that you've had drafted up, or that's been introduced after the one that we've got.
I don't know what happened there, but.
And we don't have a substitute to pass out. So we're going to have to take this by, and we'll put it on the calendar for next week, but you'll need to get us the actual bill that you are referring to.
I need to find out what y'all have if.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's take it by, Mr. Chairman.
All right. So we're going to take 1341 by for the week, let them to work out the details of what they have and what we have that's been introduced, and we'll hear this again next week. Senator McPike. McPike.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was waiting for it.
Yeah.
All right. Senate Bill 1174. What it does essentially the key is lines 107 to 109. It allows tinting of vehicles that are being used by private security that are security canine handlers as licensed by DCJS. So there's already code section that licenses these folks. I got a call from a constituent who pointed out, told me, look, I've got the AC, I got the temp sensors, the locks, the other safety measures, but I still need something else. The tinting is a big help to keep the dogs cool. So that's why this is before the committee. I really didn't realize there were a lot of security canine handlers, but evidently there are. There are some out there, and I think this is a reasonable provision to help those who are in the business and do have canines in the service.
So just one real quick question, not that I'm opposed to it, but are the private security vehicles identified to where an officer would know that that is a private security vehicle?
Yeah, I don't believe there's necessarily clear or different markings. I think there's no regulation around that per se. So there could be a stop involved. I also thought about that as well.
Yeah.
And that's going to be sort of I think the company policy in reducing that sort of incident. So.
Okay. All right. Any questions of the patron? This is the Keep the Pooch Cool bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Senator Peake. I'm just trying to understand, I guess, the original purpose and intent of the bill, so I can better
It's getting
understand.
contagious to the committee members.
Can you explain a little bit more about, I guess, the problem we're trying to solve with this issue? Just a little bit more detail.
Sure. So a lot of times the security canine and police canine have dogs in the back, and between stops and different stuff, you need to run the AC continuously and other things. But those dogs get hot, especially after a run or an August day in Virginia. It's hard to keep up, and so the tinting really helps to reduce those temps down quicker for the animal, and that's really the concern, is how to add a little bit more tool to keep the canine in good shape.
So currently, law enforcement have tinted windows in order to keep these canines cool whenever they're operating search and rescue. They are unmarked vehicles that carry these canines that have all this. It has the dog cage and so forth. Canines' body temperature is a lot more heated than the human, except for mine. We probably have an equal amount, but these cars are equipped just to keep the dogs cool. Most of them have mats, not seats, and because if you were to bring one in for a tracking, then if the dog's overheated, it's not going to track. It's going to be useless when it gets there. So I think that's what he's trying to get to, is that some of these private agencies are being contracted to use their canines that they train and able to keep them cool in the car.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Cosgrove.
Thank you. I'm looking at the financial impact statement, and there is none. But it says currently all windows on law enforcement vehicles, sightseeing carriers, contract passenger carriers, and the rear or rear side windows of emergency medical service vehicles are excluded from these requirements. So, I mean, there's plenty of places out there that already have the tinting, and I'm all for FIDO. So,
yeah,
I would move to report the bill.
All right, it's been a motion and a second to report Senate Bill 1174. Before we do that, I just would like to see if there's anybody in the audience that would like to speak to the bill. Seeing none, Senator Sutherland.
Question. How will law enforcement know? This was the question I think Senator Carrico asked, and in the exchange I didn't follow. How will law enforcement know? Are they going to have to stop them and then find out?
It would be a stop, and then they would have to present their DCJS license.
And is there any way, because I think the committee seems to all be supportive of this, just so you don't have to carry another bill a few years from now. Is there any way we can just help them out, and so that law enforcement would be able to identify them?
I think Mr. Chairman, there are private security companies that don't necessarily want markings as well. And so
I get that, but
that is a part of the issue. I think there's a fairly wide range of services that are offered throughout Virginia, and I think frankly would involve and stop. The chairman might have a different idea, but
Yeah, I don't think it would happen as often as you would think, because a lot of these private companies have SUV-type vehicles that already have tinting that are already legal. It'd be more of your car, I guess you would say, that you're tinting them out. And normally when they're used, they're being called, so they'll be familiar with who these private companies are and have an understanding of what the car looks like. And there'll be occasionally that they'll be stopped, but I don't think it'll be as often as you think.
Want to save him time in a future session?
It's like not stopping the volunteer rescue guy when he's coming to save you. It's you learn who they are. All right, any further questions? All right. Hearing none, is there a motion? Okay, we already have a motion and a second. All in favor, vote aye on the electronic voting board.
$11 ayes, 0 nays.
Bill reports 11-0.
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Is he still here? Yeah, well, is Senator Obenshain here?
Senator Stewart, Senator Stewart have to flip-flop.
Okay, all right. All right. Yeah, Senator Cosgrove. Mine's not on the calendar, yours is. So you want to take them by and do them at the same time? Okay. All right. Senator Cosgrove.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have Senate Bill 1364 before the committee. This bill removes the requirement that a vehicle be a late model in order to meet the definition of salvage vehicle due to having been, one, acquired by an insurance company as part of a claims process, or damage to the extent that its estimated cost of repair would exceed its value before the damage minus salvage value. The bill expands corresponding reporting requirements to require application for a salvage certificate for certain early model vehicles. The bill also removes the requirement that a vehicle be a late model in order to meet the definition of a rebuilt vehicle. Mr. Chairman, in discussions with DMV and others, I've seen the FIS on this. I would more rather call it the dubious and devious dollar diversion document, okay, as we get so many times when somebody didn't want to do something. But I think we've all met together and talked. This probably needs to go into a study, as other things have done in the past. And if that is the decision of the committee, then I would ask the committee to do so. The one thing I would also ask, Mr. Chairman, is that this be looked at on its own merit and not have a lot of other things thrown into it, but just have this particular item looked at solely in this vein. So, Mr. Chairman, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Okay. Senator Favola.
The Joint Transportation Study Commission? I'm not clear what is that what your ask is at this point?
Well, I think
Mr. Chairman,
that's the only option this committee has. I don't think we can refer it to any other type
Right,
study.
so I just wanted to make sure that that's what the patron wanted.
We could ask DMV to study it with a letter, but if we put it in any committee, it'll be the Joint Commission on Transportation and Accountability.
Mr. Chairman, I'd suggest that, and maybe I'd put this in a motion if you're agreeable, that you write a letter to the Commissioner of DMV and ask him to take a look at it. Ask him to convene a work group of the interested parties and come up with a response or an analysis of the bill anyway.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, I would agree with that approach, asking the DMV to look at this with the stakeholders, okay?
Yep.
Okay, in full disclosure, this is kind of funny. My wife works at USAA, right? And USAA actually already checks off the box, but they called my office and said, we're not going to be able to support your bill. I said, I don't care, whatever. But anyway, if that letter to DMV could happen, and Mr. Chairman, I'd like to be involved in that as well.
Okay. Mr. Commissioner, before you step down there, one of the things I guess we'll put in the letter is all the stakeholders be involved with Senator Cosgrove over the year to look at the cost that's being associated to the salvage piece of this bill, and to look at the impact that it would have as it moves forward. So we'll probably direct by letter to you to do this study and convene that work group, and to make Senator Cosgrove a part of it.
Mr. Chairman, would the appropriate motion be to PBI with a letter to the Commissioner?
Yeah, I don't think we can carry anything over this year.
Study the content of the bill?
Right.
Convene a work group to study the content of the bill.
Yep, that'd be the proper motion.
That's your motion, Senator?
That is.
Then I will second it.
All right, so we have a motion to PBI with a letter to the Commissioner to study the issue over the year and convene the work group to do so. Does anybody want to speak to it before we take the vote? All right.
I think everybody knows where it's going,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, so.
All right, that's the motion. It's been properly seconded. All in favor, vote aye on electronic voting board.
$11 ayes, 0 nays.
All right.
Thank you for killing my bill. No,
You,
thank you,
you're,
Mr. Chairman.
you're, hey, we love doing those. So, Senator Marsden, you have, is he gone? So, Senator Deeds, you have a license plate bill if you want to present that.
Can I do that from up here?
Yeah.
This is just a license plate bill for the International Association of Firefighters. It's my understanding they've got the applications have been collected. Are they here? Is anybody here from the firefighters?
So yours is just changing the revenue stream to make it a revenue sharing bill.
Yes,
It's already a license plate. It doesn't do anything that requires the proper signatures. It just does a change in how the revenue is split.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Cosgrove.
Thank you. Just to make sure that I have this right, this also increases the cost of the plate if it's a revenue sharing plate. Is that correct?
It does.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
And this came, Mr. Chair, at the request of the International Association of Firefighters, of the Virginia chapter of it, I guess.
Okay.
Your report, Mr. Chairman.
Does anyone want to speak to the bill? All right, there's a motion. Is there a second to report? Is there a second?
Second.
All right. It's a motion and a second that we report the bill. All in favor, vote aye. Electronic voting board.
$11 ayes, 0 nays.
All right, the bill reports 11-0. Now I'm going to take up Senator Newman's bill, even though he's not here. That's always dangerous. But Senator Newman had a meeting that he was required to be at and couldn't be here today. But this is working with commercial vehicle training and testing. I know that he and the parties that were involved have had extensive meetings with the DMV commissioner, myself, Senator Newman, And I know that they have people that are here to testify today, and we want to hear that testimony, but I believe there's a substitute that we'll need to adopt. And we're going to hear that testimony today because I don't want to have to bring them back. I think there's peace in the valley, everything's been worked out, and we should be able to take it up immediately next week when we meet on Wednesday and dispose of, or not dispose, that's a bad word, isn't it? And be able to favorably look at the bill, because there's been a lot of work that's went into this in the past couple of weeks. So if you want to speak, Nicole, and then whoever you have here to testify to the bill, save them from having to come back next week when Senator Newman can be here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for letting us do testimony today and for letting me speak while Senator Newman was not here. I'll explain what's in the bill and what's in the substitute and then let y'all take testimony. When the federal regulations changed in 2015, they put additional requirements on testing for commercial driver's licenses. So we previously had 40 eligible test sites in Virginia, and that went down to 9 for Class A testing, which meant that, Nicole Brenner with Reed Smith on behalf of the Commercial Vehicle Training Association.
Sorry, I thought we all knew you.
So our member schools are sending their instructor and their truck to take the test, and in some cases, in some parts of the state, they're driving a long way and having to wait a couple weeks to take those tests. So this bill proposes allowing the driver training schools to also test their students when they meet certain additional criteria in the bill, an additional bonding requirement, additional program length, and either the school or the instructor is already licensed so that somebody already has a relationship with the DMV. Happy to answer questions about the bill. The substitute makes their application annual. Normally, the third-party testing application is a one-time application. They will do it annually. Changes the employer testing from 75 to 50 to encourage more employers to test their own drivers, adds a reporting requirement that we worked with the DMV on so that we can look at safety of CDL drivers, and allows grounds for revocation of the license. If anything that's grounds for revocation is found during the application process, then the commissioner wouldn't approve that license. Happy to answer any questions about that, or I can just introduce who's here.
Okay, yeah. Any questions of the, I start to say patron. Is there any questions for Nicole?
Yeah.
Senator Football.
Licensed, I mean, do you expect this to really grow the number and perhaps make our roads safer because more people will have access to these third-party trainers?
So I think the commissioner would say there's between 10 and 15, I think it's 12 or 13 Class A driver training schools. There's only a small number of those that would qualify under this bill to also be testers, but we're hoping that it will help with the wait time problem, that we could get them to the tests faster. They're finishing school, so having the schools isn't the problem. It's just getting them to the test at the end of school. In many cases, they're also eligible for the workforce training grants, and we have jobs waiting for them after they can take the test.
It sounds like a really good idea. I'm going to make a motion if you're ready, Mr. Chairman.
Let us hear from the people that are here in support of the bill.
Mr. Chairman, I have Don Lefebvre, who's the president of CVTA here, and also some schools to speak on behalf of the bill. I'm not going to waste the committee's time, so I'm just going to have them introduce themselves.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Chairman, Don Lefebvre with the Commercial Vehicle Training Association. Thank you. Thank you very much for hearing from us. We support it, obviously. Won't waste any more of your time.
All right, thank you.
Yep. Any other questions for me?
All right. Now, anyone else have any questions for Nicole? And let me just say to Senator Vivola, I'm reluctant to take a motion without the patron here. I would just prefer to wait till next week when he is here to be able to, well, just to make sure that nothing goes wrong. I had made him a promise that we wouldn't take it up until he was back. So we would hear from the witnesses. But I know Senator Steph has some more questions, but I just wanted to make that, acknowledge that. I know you were wanting to make a motion, which is good, but I told him we wouldn't do that. Okay.
He's also not proxied, and I think he'd like to vote for his own bill.
That could be the reason. Senator Steph, I know you have a few questions also.
I have only one question. It may have 27 parts, but I only have one simple question. What's the current backlog today? So if I just if I just graduated from class and just finished my last class, how long will it take me without this to register and get scheduled and go to and do the test?
Mr. Chairman, I think that depends on, Senator Steph, on what testing location you're trying to get tested at and where you're coming from. I think 2, 3, 4 weeks, but I'll let the commissioner speak to that because I have a feeling he has more specific answer than I do.
And if I may, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, let's say I'm in Hampton Roads, I'm in Grundy, Virginia, and I'm in Fairfax, Virginia. So let's look at those three scenarios.
Can't be 3 places at one time.
No, I'm just saying I went to a school in Hampton, a school out in Grundy, and a school in Fairfax.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Rick Holcomb, DMV Commissioner, and I'd say what Nicole said is probably right, but just to give you a little perspective that we're not as bad as it sounds. If you took the test in D.C. and was to be tested in D.C., it would be a 6-month wait. If you went to school in Pennsylvania and were tested in Pennsylvania, it would be a 6-month wait. We like to have about 2 weeks. Unfortunately, it's gotten up to about 4 weeks. As Nicole said, the card of hands that FMCSA dealt us a few years back was, first of all, said that the testing site had to go from 1 acre to 2 acres. Nicole's absolutely right. We had 40 sites. We reduced it down to 9. You're right, that do the Class A. The test is now much longer. It's a 2-hour test, and it's harder. We got more people failing. So in Grundy, you most likely would have to go to Abington to be tested. Virginia Beach, you would go to our Suffolk test site. I forgot what was the third one. Fairfax, you would go to our Manassas test site. Anything that will help us create more sites to test is certainly worth supporting. Although the administration has no position in this, but I do want to thank Edward and Nicole for negotiating some of the concerns we had to the point that it is a consensus bill at this point.
And
Mr. Chairman, may I interrupt just the parliamentary issue first? I move the substitute.
Okay, now we can do this. There's a motion and a second that we adopt the substitute. All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed. All
I
right.
apologize to Senator D-Staff.
Not a problem. Mr. Chairman, I had one follow-up question for Nicole, if that's okay.
Sure.
So, Nicole, would you describe this as a jobs bill?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Steph, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all I need.
And I will comment, the reason there's not a site in Grundy, there's not 2 level acres that you can do this. Okay, if no one else wants to speak to the bill, we'll take the substitute up when the patron, who actually is on this committee, would like to vote for his own bill, up when we first meet on Wednesday next week. So thank you for the patience. And I will go back to Senator Deeds. You have 2 more bills.
Yes, sir. The first one is 1480.
Okay.
What 1481 makes some significant changes to our training of commercial driver's licenses. And the long and short.
Before you start, I think there's a technical amendment that needs to be made, line amendment, if I can get Beth to report that for us. Senate Bill 1481.
Mr. Chairman, the amendment is on line 816. After in, strike section 46.2-1711, insert section 46.2-1710.
I'll move the amendment, technical amendment.
All right, it's moved and seconded. What line?
816, Mr. Chairman.
All right. It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the technical amendment to line 816 in Senate Bill 1481. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay.
Okay, this is a DMV bill, and the long and short of it is it makes about 6 big changes to the training of commercial driver's license holders in Virginia. And the long and short of it is that it brings us into compliance with federal law. We're not going to be able to issue licenses anymore in Virginia if we don't do this, and we could lose a substantial amount of money from federal highway money. The changes it makes, it brings us into substantial compliance with minimal training requirements for commercial motor vehicle operators, regulations issued by the federal government in 2016. It allows DMV to release crash reports in compliance with the terms of DMV's federal grant for the traffic records data systems. It brings DMV into compliance with current federal regulations governing the licensure and disqualification of a commercial learner's permits or commercial driver's license holders. It allows DMV to release information for certain CDL applicants related to skills performance evaluations conducted on behalf of FMCSA by DMV to the agency in compliance with the SPE agreement with the federal agency. It changes the validity period of a commercial learner's permit from 180 days with a 180-day renewal option to no more than 1 year with no option for renewal. It allows DMV to implement federal regulations, allowing DMV to waive the knowledge portion of the CDL application process for applicants who are or were employed within 1 year prior to application by the military in a position requiring the operation of a commercial motor vehicle. That's what it does. It's an agency bill. There are agency folks here who can answer technical questions. But
it basically just brings us into compliance to what the federal regulations are.
That's my understanding. Yes, sir.
Does anyone from the agency want to speak to the bill?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Millicent Ford, Assistant Commissioner with DMV. Senator Deeds did outline the 6 major areas. The bill does cover those areas. 2 of them are mandatory, affecting our ability to issue CDLs and affecting our funds that we get, federal funds that we get. 2 are the 2 that he mentioned regarding FMCS releasing crash report information to federal motor carrier safety regulations will allow us to continue to operate and maintain a crash report data system that we have, and it's a pretty state-of-the-art system that allows us to do that. We found that we don't have authority to release crash report information to them when they're investigating crashes involving commercial motor vehicle operators. And then there's another DMV is the only state in the nation that has the authority and has been trained to conduct skills performance evaluations for individuals who have missing or impaired limbs, maybe as a result of military service. But it allows, DMV has received the training to perform the skills performance evaluations. And so we've been certified to do that. And so as a part of the agreement and FMCSA allowing us to do it, they have to come in periodically to conduct audits of our system just to make sure that we're making the correct decisions regarding the skills performance evaluations. And so one of the changes would authorize DMV to give FMCSA representatives access to the data so that they can make sure that we're making the proper decisions regarding the skills performance evaluations. And then the last 2 changes relate to areas that we think will help improve the situation for CDL holders. Currently, these commercial driver's license, commercial learner's permit is issued for up to 6 months. And then if the person isn't ready to get their CDL at that point, they have to come back in to renew it for another 6 months. This will just allow us to issue the commercial learner's permit for 1 year and eliminate the need for them to return back in. So it is a convenience for the commercial learner's permit holder. And then the last one has to do with it's certainly a military-friendly bill. We currently have the ability, we've been granted permission to waive the skills test, CDL skills test for individuals who are in the military and have, as part of a job in the military, been operating a commercial motor vehicle. We currently have the ability to waive the skills test based on the service. The change in this bill would allow us to waive the knowledge test based upon their knowledge and experience over the past year. They had to have been working in a job in the military that requires the operation of a commercial motor vehicle. So we think those changes are necessary in order for us to continue to operate and comply with federal regulations, with exemption requirements and grant requirements.
Mr. Chairman, would that include the Marine Corps? Does that include the Marine Corps?
Pardon me?
Would that include the Marine Corps?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right.
So does anyone on the committee have a non-Marine Corps question?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, and this is very technical. This is more like a lawyer thing, and I swear I'm not a lawyer. This would be more like a Senator Rumbachain type question. On line 596, it strikes third party and inserts third party. Is that just, did I miss something there?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Cosgrove, it strikes through a hyphenated phrase.
Oh, okay. I can't see through the line.
See?
Okay, thank you. There it is. Thank you.
And you're not a proofreader either.
That's right.
So any other questions? It's been moved and seconded that we report 1481 as amended. All in favor, vote aye on the electronic voting board.
Eleven ayes, 0 nays.
11-0. Bills reported. Senator Deeds, driver's license designation of traumatic brain injury.
I've got that bill, and it's important to me, but you've got the chairman of the powerful
Mm.
committee sitting out in the audience.
Oh, is he here? Okay. Yeah, he's got a real interesting bill. Senator Obenchain.
Chairman, members of the committee, it's good to see you. Thank you, Senator Deeds. This falls in the category of we live in a society of smart rats. It doesn't matter how you change the maze, they always find the cheese. This is a bill that addresses the boot statute. Those of you who may have gotten a parking ticket or two are familiar with the boots that are placed on your wheels. And in private parking lots, occasionally they apply boots as well. If you fail to pay the fee and you come back and there's a boot attached to your wheel. And this statute specifically refers to boots or other devices that prevent your wheel from turning, and it imposes a limit on how much the owner of that parking lot can charge for removal of that boot, because as you can imagine, they have great power over you if they have your vehicle immobilized, and it imposes a $25 cap upon removal of that boot. Well, some people who have decided that we want to find a way around that have created these devices, and I'm sure that if we outlawed one device, they'd come up with something else, but something called a barnacle that is attached by a suction device to your windshield, and it attaches across the windshield, and if you get in your car, you can't get the doggone thing off, and you can't see out the windshield, so I guess it's Pet Detective or Dumb and Dumber that the chairman told me, if we don't do something about this, we're going to have people driving around with their heads out the windows trying to figure out a way to evade this. There is a parking lot, and this is one that the city attorney for the city of Harrisonburg asked me to bring. There is a privately owned parking lot with parking meters in the city of Harrisonburg. And the owner of that parking lot has ingeniously discovered these barnacles. And there are certain eating establishments that may serve an adult beverage or two and college students or diners or parents come back and maybe have overstayed their parking meter by an hour and find a barnacle attached to their windshield, and they call and learn that it costs somewhere in the neighborhood of $175 to have the thing removed from their windshield. And people have looked up this statute and said, well, wait a second, they can't charge me more than $25. And it doesn't fit within the definition of a boot. This statute does not apply. So what this does is it is intended to amend this statute just to make it clear that you can't hold a car ransom for this with some creative, ingenious device that is intended to perform the same function that a boot performs. And the city attorney's office is, quite frankly, just tired of fielding those telephone calls from irate diners in downtown Harrisonburg. And if they haven't come to towns near you, barnacles are on their way. So, Mr. Chairman, I would ask that you act favorably upon this immense piece of important
I always
legislation.
thought barnacles was something on the bottom of ships.
We got them.
Now we got them on windshields.
How about that?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Cosgrove.
Senator Obenshain, I'm looking at the text of the bill, and it refers a couple of times to a device used to immobilize the trespassing vehicle. Well, you just said that, you know, if you really want to be stupid, you could try to drive with your head out the window. Is this? It doesn't seem that barnacle is really immobilizing the vehicle. I support what you're trying to do. I'm just not sure that that language is it.
I thought
well, it's not
that we had
legal
discussions with council, at least my office did, and that there was a belief that this would accomplish that purpose. And I apologize for.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Cosgrove, this language is mirrored in the first amended section of the code in this bill. This 46.2-1216 is what allows localities to use boots. But for some reason, 46.2-1231 specifically uses the term boot. So when drafting this, I mirrored the language that already allows localities to use boots so that there's no confusion as to who can do what.
So I would point out or lawful operation on 105 that's already in the bill because it's not lawful to operate a motor vehicle with the obstruction on the windshield.
Yeah, and I think we're looking at two different parts of the sentence. What this does is it applies it to a device that causes the vehicle to be immobilized in a manner that prevents its removal or lawful operation. And this would prevent the lawful, believe me, and I defer to the state trooper in the center of this panel, retired trooper, it would prevent its lawful operation. But then it goes on to define these devices as devices that don't damage the vehicle. So the barnacles, like the boots, don't damage the vehicle, but they do prevent the lawful operation. Is that, I think, now that I look again at the statute, that was what we talked about.
Any other questions? Anyone in the audience like to speak to the bill?
I asked the same question.
It's been moved and seconded that we report Senate Bill 1432. All in favor, vote aye.
$11 ayes, 0 nays.
Love to.
11-0. Bill's reported.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Resume. Senator Deeds.
The bill is 1487. Back in the fall, I was visiting with a group of people who had been through traumatic brain injury in Charlottesville, and a young man that lives in Lynchburg, I think, who was I'm not sure whether he's Senator Newman or Senator Peake's constituent, explained to me about being stopped in a motor vehicle or going through a road check or something, and because of speech, he was questioned for DUI, I think. And so that when you apply for a driver's license, there's an application that allows you to check certain boxes, and if you provide medical proof that you've got these issues, and I think the application speaks to insulin dependence, speech impairment, hearing impairment, intellectual disability, or autism spectrum disorder. If you can check those boxes, you provide the medical evidence, your driver's license will note that that'll be noted on your driver's license. And that what this bill seeks to do is to provide for people with traumatic brain injury. They don't have to check this. They don't have to be identified this way. But if they request it and they can prove they can prove that they've got the issue, this is just a way for them to provide some information on their driver's license to an officer if they get stopped or if they go through a road check that might help explain part of some of their condition. Now, I've got a witness here from a group in Charlottesville. I think it's you're a brain injury case manager at the Bridge Line. Is that right? I'd like you to hear from him if you can add anything to what I said. You know more about it than I do.
Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Randy Cavallo. I'm from the Bridge Line. We're a nonprofit in Charlottesville that helps people with brain injury. You had mentioned the one client that I had that was stopped. He's a very intelligent man. He's a historian, was a professional before his accident. He's got a vocabulary that's 10 times what mine is. Just the nicest guy in the world, and he was in a very stressful situation, being roadside for 2 hours. So this is something that he brings up every time I visit him since then. I have another client that tends to, his brain injury causes him to not have a verbal filter. So while he's the nicest guy in the world, won't mean anybody any harm, he tends to tell jokes at inappropriate times, thinking that he's building rapport with people. So if a cop asks him, do you have anything illegal in the car? That's when this is going to come out. And the worst thing is stress makes it worse. So he'll continue joking as he gets into more trouble and as more backup shows up. You can see how that could compound a problem.
Mr. Chair, it's my understanding there's nothing about this application that would prevent an officer from investigating further if he's got probable cause that there's an issue.
Well, I was going to bring that up. I just was going to say I've stopped people with medical conditions that are identified as far as diabetes or whatever. That doesn't stop the odor of alcohol that singes your eyebrows.
That's exactly
leads to an arrest.
That might help explain. This might help explain some problem with the voice.
It could better inform
coordination.
Yeah, it could better inform at the beginning and let the officer make a better decision if they're going to pull that thread or not. The next example, I've got a client that confabulates, and confabulation is, the brain's really interesting. When you need an answer and for some reason there's a brain injury that's not providing one, it doesn't throw back an error code. It does the best with what it's got, so it just makes something up. And because your brain's feeding you this answer, in this case, this person would believe that answer even if it's demonstrably untrue. So if it was something ridiculous and they said it out loud and they're fully, they have full conviction that this is the case, and an officer might have some issues with this. Now, in a neurotypical person, if you heard something that was demonstrably untrue, you'd pull that thread, you'd want to investigate. Maybe that's something that the Commonwealth attorney would like to know underneath, why they're hiding. And in this case, this client will get stressed out and will continue to make these false statements with no intention to deceive or anything. It's just the nature of his injury. So during a recent wellness check, a police officer identified that he was suspicious and started asking questions and got some kind of bizarre answers back as it progressed. But the officer was familiar with this person, was familiar with this condition, and because of that was able to provide him with appropriate services instead of kind of turning it into interrogation. But it could have easily escalated. I think the best practices tend to work in typical situations. We see a fire, you think water, and that works most of the time. But sometimes it could be a grease fire, it could be an electrical fire, and those times, places, it takes a different approach. And I think when police officers have that information, they can change the way things turn out and not make a situation worse. Keeps the individual safe and happy, and keeps the officers and other emergency providers more effective. And I think that makes everybody safer. With regards to the optional thing, we have people with brain injuries. It's such a wide range of effects that it has on people. Some people are kind of proud of the fact that they can go undetected and nobody notices, and they won't opt in on this. Other people are dealing with these types of misunderstandings on a daily basis. The individual that you mentioned, Senator Deeds, even in his own doctor's office, they'll kind of take a step back because of his gait, and they might think that he's intoxicated, even though he's familiar there. And it might take a little while before they realize, oh, okay, that's what's going on with him. But for those people who are just constantly running into these misunderstandings, it would be a godsend to them. It would be pretty life-changing. And when I told the people who inspired me bringing this up when you visited, that I would be here today and speaking, they were pretty proud that their experiences could make a change in the law. Thank you.
So I guess I'm a little confused. I don't know what the identifier on the license is going to do to prevent a law enforcement officer from stopping an individual if they have exhibited some form of violation of the law or a checking detail as they come through. I don't know that within itself is going to change the situation. And you brought up the fact that the one gentleman would say something that wasn't true. Well, probably 1 out of every 10 you stop don't tell you the truth.
Yeah, I think it would be
2 beers is a common answer.
Sure.
I just think there's a lot more to that as far as why they're being stopped.
I think it would sort of be like the tint from earlier, where a person might get stopped, but immediately upon you get identification of somebody and you would see that they have a brain injury, and that would kind of inform how it goes. You'd have that information, and people with brain injuries are more likely to have run-ins with the officers. So after a while, you'd get to know this person and tailor your approach accordingly.
You know, Mr. Chair, I don't think we're cutting new ground here, because on the application, this is the application the person fills out when they get their license. There's already a list of special indicator requests. Please show the following indicators on my license, permit, or ID card. And it's got insulin-dependent diabetic, speech impairment, hearing impairment, intellectual disability, autism spectrum disorder, must submit required physician statement. Now, if there's probable cause to make a stop, none of those things are going to prevent you from stopping and investigating. But if you're going through a road check, or somebody's just doing a wellness check on you at your house, and you're showing them your ID, that gives the officer a little more information, helps him understand, helps him or her understand what's going on, potentially.
So I know there's a lot in the queue here. Senator McClellan was first. So. Well, okay. Senator Favola.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My interpretation of this is it will inform the officer and may assist in the officer's expectations of how the communications might go. Because if the officer is unaware of this, for example, and an individual is inappropriately making a joke during a question and answer period, an officer could interpret that as being belligerent or disrespectful, and when in effect it was the result of a person simply not having a filter and being able to respond in an appropriate way. It was not intentionally disrespectful. It was so I think that's what the advantage is. I mean, and maybe some officers would take a softer approach, still investigate, still get the job done. I mean, the key to really ensuring that this matters is having officers that are trained. to recognize these things, but the first step is having it identified in the license. So I don't see any harm in this. I don't see it impeding law enforcement or the investigation of a potential crime. I only see it informing the situation. Is that an accurate interpretation?
Yeah, I believe so.
That's certainly what, Mr. Chair, that's what we intend, that's what I intended with the bill. I didn't intend to interfere with any legitimate investigation. And I don't, if there's probable cause to investigate, I don't think this is going to prevent that from going forward.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Chase, then Senator Cosgrove.
Thank you. I actually really like this idea because I think that it's going to help our law enforcement when they pull someone over to better identify quickly the situation maybe that they've come across and can maybe better understand what their situation is. Have you met with fraternal order police, or do we have a law enforcement? I know we have our expert resident over here as the chairman, but
I've attended CIT meetings,
Okay.
which are sort of similar, based around mental health mostly, but there's sort of a similar thing in there. Well, in terms of the autism designation that's already
Right.
on the license.
well, I'm going to support your bill today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator DeSteff. Oh, Cosgrove, I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman, I'm a little torn on this bill, okay? And I think that designation can go both ways. Number one, if somebody shows them their driver's license and it shows to have a TBI indicator of some type, you know, I don't know what the officer then is going to think, even if that person has not been acting erratically. So I'm not sure if that doesn't go the other way, what I think we're trying to accomplish here. The other thing is, you know, there are medical alert, you know, medallions, wristbands. I actually have a card in my wallet that tells that I had a gastric bypass done, okay? And I'm just wondering, do we need to do this additionally to the license? I really don't know what to do on this one. I mean, it goes both ways. I
think my stance on it would be that the more information, the better when I'm going into a situation. I'm not a police officer now, but when I deal with crisis, I want everything I can get so I can make an informed decision. On the idea of stand-ins, medical bracelets, ID cards, there's a lot of user error that can happen there. And during a touchy situation of a traffic stop, somebody with a brain injury, with memory problems, would have to initiate that with the officer because the officer wouldn't be looking for it. They would have to reach for it, say, I've got a special card in my wallet that tells you that I have a brain injury, and there's all kinds of places that could go wrong, from not remembering to making a sudden movement, to the police not understanding them in a high-stress situation. So in this, the police officer would ask for registration and ID, and it's already prompted in that person, so it would be taken care of automatically.
Senator
Thank you.
Steph.
Mr. Chairman. Sorry. Mr. Chairman, I had a quick question for the patron, and I'm going to follow this up with kind of a couple of examples. The question is, this requires you to have a statement from a doctor, correct?
If you want this.
Correct. If you want this, you have to get a
special
statement from the
indicator
doctor.
request. If a person wants this notation on their driver's license, they've got to check the box first, then they've got to have medical proof that they are what they say they are.
Correct. And that's kind of what I thought, and that's how I read it. And Mr. Chairman, let me take it to the next step. So a doctor can also issue a card. And when I was in the military, we used vehicles, non-military vehicles and unmarked vehicles to transport certain things. If we were stopped, which I had a heavy foot, so I was stopped on more than one occasion, we would hand our driver's license and then a card, and the card explained enough about what we were transporting that the officer knew that he couldn't have access to anything inside the vehicle. But on something like this, because I understand Senator Cosgrove's concern, both sides, wouldn't it be better just to have, when the individual's pulled over, to provide his driver's license and then a separate card? Because your driver's license is used in so many different places So many different areas. Every time you go to the bank, they ask for your driver's license. Every time you go to a establishment to have an adult beverage, they ask for your driver's license. There are so many places, and again, I know some people want people to know that they have TBI. Other times, they don't want people to know they have TBI. So what you could do is you would just hand them this separate document, which, again, a doctor would issue, just as the military issues a card on this, and you would hand them your driver's license and that card.
And Mr. Chair, if I appreciate the senator's concerns, but there's already a process in place, and there's a block. You check if you don't want it on your driver's license, you don't have to have it, and you can get another card from your doctor. But this is one way to give the officer a little more information up front, and you check these boxes, and so it's already there.
Senator Marsden.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think if we just reframe this a second, suppose somebody came to us with this list that Senator Deeds shared with us, and brain injury was already included on that list, and they asked us, does anything not belong here? No, we would say, no, all of these things fit here. There's nothing out of alignment with something that shouldn't be on that list. You would assume that, if you have intellectual disability, then of course you would have traumatic brain injury. So, this makes a lot of sense. It's optional for the person to do it, and I do share the concern that, especially somebody under the stress, trying to locate a card that may be kept somewhere else other than with the driver's license could present a number of problems for an individual with brain injury who is also under stress. This keeps it simple. It's in keeping with what we're already doing. State policy already has a plan for these kinds of things. This is just adding one more disorder to the list, and it's a highly appropriate addition to that list.
So I want to interject, and then, Commissioner, you can speak, but I'm going to give you a perspective from an old officer, no expert, but one who has been there and done that. These lists grow each year, diabetes, whatever. And, the police officer stops an individual or check-in detail, and he sees something out of the ordinary, and he does a process of an elimination. They will check for medical conditions. They've been, every police officer now has had CIT training. And the gentleman, the patron of the bill, he's a good attorney. But the problem exists on the law enforcement side is now with these identifiers on driver's licenses, the attorneys have the ability in the court to bring in reasonable doubt. Well, what about the brain injury issue there? Or what about the diabetes? Did you have them checked for low blood sugar? Or what about this and that? And I think when you start adding all these lists of medical conditions on the card, even though the officer's looking for a lot of that, what he sees, it could be the misuse of the drugs that they are taking for whatever ailment it is, and a drug-induced inebriation or a alcohol use, maybe not excessive, but the use of other drugs. And I think what you're going to end up is adding to this list so much that when you get in a courtroom, that the law enforcement officer is at such a disadvantage. And I think if the patron was honest, he would probably use a few of these. Whenever you go up for a hearing, did you check him for his brain injury, it's on his license, or for his diabetes or whatever that use is? And I think that from a law enforcement standpoint is one of the things that I think, though there are many people who have brain injuries and they are serious, but there are people that are going to take advantage of this situation.
With all due respect, Mr. Chairman, you've got to submit a physician's statement, and that's sufficient. Physician's statement has to satisfy DMV that there really is a problem. And, I'm going to raise the issues in court, whether it's on the license or not,
I know
if
you
they
will.
exist.
With all due respect, too, I could go to the doctor today and get a handicap sticker from the injuries I've had, but I can walk across the street and don't have to
Yeah,
walk.
well,
I'm just saying that doctors will issue you things regardless of whether you really need them or not.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Cosgrove, real quick.
Just real quickly, you know, we talked about doctors using, and I'm not trying to muddy your waters here at all, okay? Because I
Absolutely.
actually think this, I'm turning into thinking this is a better idea. But it says you need basically to know from your doctor. Okay, well, TBI is not something that your regular GP is going to be able to diagnose and treat. I mean, should this designation not come from a neurologist or a psychologist or something like that, and not just a general practitioner doctor?
The person that has a brain injury, they would have a neurologist at some point have evaluated them, and I think that's what we would, I say we, but that's what the DMV would be looking for.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I guess where I'm going with this is all these other, you know, notations on the license have to be just basically from a doctor.
It wouldn't be frivolous.
I think that something like this, being as specialized as it is, should probably come from a neurologist or the like. I mean, that's just an opinion, so.
Well, Tim.
Thank you.
All right, go ahead. You were going to.
Just to address that, I think when they say it's no come from the doctor, it would be somebody authorized to make that determination that they have a brain injury, so that sort of implies a specialist in that area, and generally it's a long-term neuropsych. That's a battery of tests that go throughout the day. So it wouldn't be something frivolous. You could just show up and have your primary care doctor vouch for you. Say, yeah, I had a brain injury when I was young. Can you just sign this? It wouldn't be something like that. On the, you know, who else are we letting in kind of concern, you know, where does it stop? Where do we draw the line? I think one thing you'll see in common with everything on the license already is it's things that affect your ability to communicate. So with autism, this will say to the officers, this person's not being belligerent. They just might have difficulty communicating with deafness. Again, the person's not ignoring the authority of the cop. They can see that instantly and not jump to that point where they're yelling at the person to take commands. You know, the person can give them the license and sets them off on the right foot before they go into other tactics that might not be applicable. With brain injury, it is hugely around communication. The ability to understand others, the ability to speak with aphasia, you can't find words, and also your memory. If you, as an officer, give me a 3-part order to get out of the car, put my hands up, turn around, a lot of my clients can't follow that.
Well, I will say this, and I want the commissioner to come up because I'm going to bring something up that nobody's talked about.
Sure.
The law enforcement officer has the ability, if this gets to the point where, whether it's a diabetic or anything, if he feels that person is a threat, he can request DMV to take the license. He can do more than what you're thinking about, because then this individual has to go back to a doctor, get cleared, and this is not a court process. This is a procedural process. So if you're going to do this, and this individual gets stopped, and that officer has reason to believe that he's operating that vehicle and not communicating, that individual can lose his license whether he goes to court or not, because it's an administrative thing.
Mr. Chair, you're absolutely correct, and there's nothing about this bill that changes the police officer's ability to do his job. It's just about providing the police officer information.
I'm just putting it out there as a warning that that is a viable, everything that he's explained here. I would have written a letter to the commissioner and asked him to take the driver's license.
Mr. Chairman, Rick Holton, DMV Commissioner, to add to that, and we shared with the patron that certainly when one of these customers come in and presents that, if one of our frontline clerks thinks that that prevents them from safely driving a vehicle, that could start the medical control process as well. But to answer, I think, Senator DeSteff's question, just procedurally, what will appear on the front of the license is a 9. Then you turn the license over, and that will decode it into one of the existing conditions. Also, as the chairman would know, this then would be loaded up into VSend as well. So the officer would have that information, would have it electronically, as compared to asking someone to produce a second document. But Mr. Chairman, you are right. Anytime an officer thinks someone is not safely operating a vehicle because of potential medical conditions, they can start the process of having our medical control look at that individual.
Even today, without that designation, I can do that, or I can't, but the officer can on the street, because I think once you start putting these identifications on there and some of these things happen, it's going to be more frequent.
Mr. Chairman, question for
Senator Marsden.
For the commissioner. We've had these other conditions on there for years. You know, you would be in a position to know, has it created problems? Has it been brought to your attention that putting these medical conditions on someone's license has created a problem? No. Is it fair then to assume that adding an additional one that seems to be highly relevant to the circumstances and fits right in with the others, that this would also not cause a problem?
I mean, Mr. Chairman, again, certainly if a customer comes to us and they want that put on, and we or law enforcement thinks that that is sort of a red flag that we need to look at the customer, we'd look at it, but I don't think that it would cause any more problems than the other conditions that are listed.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, I would think that the superintendent of state police, if these things were creating problems, or the organizations of police chiefs around the state would be making it known that these things are a problem. Simply adding another relevant condition to that list is going to do absolutely no harm and can only provide information. And if it's appropriate, I'd like to move that we report the bill.
Motion and second to report the bill. If there's no one in the audience that'd like to speak to the bill, vote aye on the electronic voting board.
Six ayes, 5 nays.
Strike the vote and reopen the board. Are we clear?
Seven ayes, 4 nays.
7 ayes, 4 nays. The bill's reported.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, before we go on, I voted for this. You did a great job, by the way. I wasn't going to vote for it when I first heard about it. I was swayed in this, but I will tell you that I think the bill still needs some work. I don't think a regularly licensed physician should be giving the assertion or the designation of TBI. So we will probably at least have some floor amendments for the bill.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir.
I would also like to echo the comments of Senator Cosgrove. I was not initially going to support as well, but you did a great job.
So I'm glad they sent me.
It's nothing to do with the job you did. It's just the job that I once did that I know that's going to create some attention to that individual.
Mr. Chairman, I just have a general question. Would it be up to the Department of Motor Vehicles to determine the appropriate verification? I mean, I'm not sure if we should do it. Because you believe legislatively we should
Mr. Chairman,
determine the appropriate
if we
verification?
look in
It
the
says
code right now,
licensed
it says a
physician.
licensed
It doesn't
so
say
we've already
specialist.
done that.
So
Yeah.
I viewed that more broadly than, I viewed that to mean a specialist as well, but you apparently would want to change that.
I don't think it specifies specialist. It can be any licensed
But it could
physician.
be a specialist, I guess. is
Sure,
what-
it could be,
Right,
but it
so
doesn't require it.
But I interpreted it that DMV through regulation would want a specialist. But if you feel an amendment's necessary, I will support it.
Senator Peake, you have a bill? Yep, right there.
1105, a very simple bill. This is for Fork Union Military Academy. And I have brought it, they would like a license plate. I have the exemption for the 450. It's a very small school. They don't have that many employees. Their graduates go off to college, but I do have a number of them that would like to get license plates, but I just don't think they're going to get to the 450 number. We have the sheet from finance. It does not indicate any excess costs, so it would not need to go to finance. I think DMV says would they be able to absorb this cost without a fiscal impact, DMV. So,
Well, Mr.
and they're
Chairman,
here. Yeah.
Senator Cosgrove.
That's all I have.
Having been a student at Stanton Military Academy, I moved to PBI, the stinking bill. So
Well, in all,
I withdraw.
in all seriousness, we have held a firm line not to issue waivers for these. And there's been some very passionate people that have spoke before these committees, both House and Senate. And both House and Senate Transportation Committees have stood fast for the 18 years I've been here that we wouldn't do any waivers, that unless you got the signatures, you would not get the license plate. It doesn't mean that that Fork Union isn't worthy enough. It's just that we've not wavered on the waiver. Delegate or Senator Suderline.
Thank you, Senator Carrico, or Mr. Chairman. I've got a question, which is basically why should Fork Union be exempt from the waiver that we require for everyone else? I mean, my inclination, unless I get an answer that's very persuasive, is to offer an amendment striking that portion. You know, they can have their license plate like everyone else, but they also have to abide by the same rules as everyone else. Because there is a cost to the taxpayers.
There is a physical impact. Yeah, it may have just came out, but there is one.
Your motion?
Well, I only want to make a motion unless I'm very persuaded, but I think I'm going to make that motion unless there's a really good answer.
Mr. Chairman, if I might.
Senator Cosgrove.
You and I both served on transportation our entire careers in the General Assembly. And I can only think of maybe one other instance where we've done this, and it was for combat wounded. As much as I would like to be able to support the bill, I don't think we can make this exception. If we do, everybody's going to want it. And therefore, I can't support the bill. I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman, I understand, and having heard that for 18 years y'all have made one, I understand. So if you will move to PBI, move to report, let's vote on the bill.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Chase.
I move to PBI the bill.
It's been a motion. Is there a second? Motion and second to PBI. All in favor, vote aye.
Ten ayes, 1 nay.
10 ayes, 1 nay. And the reason that the waiver was done for the combat wounded, there wasn't enough of them to get 400 and some. At the time, yeah. All right, Senator Marsden, I think you're the last on the list. You have a simple one with a license plate. I think it's just a name change. I'm sorry. That's Senate Bill 1020.
Yeah, Senate Bill 1020. It's it used to be they were known as the Virginia Association of Community Conflict for Community Conflict Resolution, and now they're going with Resolution Virginia. I'm on their advisory board, and these are the folks who do mediation in family matters around custody, visitation, support, other things like that. And they do wonderful work. And I think they otherwise, I'm assuming they qualify in all other ways. It's just a name change.
All right.
Question, Mr. Chairman?
Senator Cosgrove.
Are we going to have to change all the existing plates that are out there?
I don't believe that's the case. This would just be for new people coming along. It's the same organization that they're honoring with their license plates, and they would not need to be replaced. I don't believe.
Yeah. Commissioner, Mr. Chairman, may I ask the Commissioner?
Senator Cosgrove.
Can you explain the logistics, how this would work?
I'm sorry, I was talking with someone
Oh, that's
else.
okay. It's basically special license, Virginia Association for Community Conflict Resolution, the name change, updates the name of the organization whose member supporters may apply for a special license plate from Virginia Association of Community Conflict Resolution to Resolution Virginia.
Mr. Chairman, Senator, this happens all the time.
It does, okay.
Most recently, it happened when Eastern Mennonite College became Eastern Mennonite University. That just automatically allowed us to continue on colleges, but organizations come in quite frequently. This organization obviously has more than 450. They couldn't have gotten their authorization without it. And so, yes, we'll produce a new plate that'll have the new legend on it. And that will be, we will start issuing that probably at time of renewal. We will replace people's plates. Okay. So no cost, or minimum cost that we can absorb.
All right, thank you, sir.
All right, is there a motion?
Read reports.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. We report Senate Bill 1020. All in favor, vote aye.
Ten ayes, 0 nays.
Senate Bill 1020 reports. Next is Senate Bill 1073, moving your vehicle out of the roadway not to get run over again.
Yeah, there you go. Mr. Chairman, here's the problem.
I understand.
When they do these construction projects, and we've just limited this to Interstate 66, when it goes under the hot lane reconstruction or construction that they're doing. I noticed this on the 495 hot lanes, is that what happens, you eliminate the shoulders, and people have it's very slow traffic, bump, stop and go kind of thing, and you get a rear end collision that amounts to a small dent or a scratch, and people get out of their cars and they're sitting there and they're writing down information to exchange it, and they're slowing down Western civilization while this is taking place. And what this does is there'll be the Deputy Secretary of Finance has indicated that they can put up signage, which includes electronic signs that just says, move over or go to the next designated pull-off area, which may include an exit ramp and an agreed upon location. If you just made it to the designated pull-off areas that are created, somebody might have to drive by the exit that they were going to get off on to go to one, and next thing you know, they're in Washington, D.C., and having to find a way to turn around. This is to move traffic. I think there is an actual fiscal positive impact to the Commonwealth by keeping businesses more efficient and keeping people moving and on the job. But I tell you, it can back up traffic when you're down to limited lanes and no way to pull off. You've got to get these folks moving and off the highway as quickly as you can. It'll be a learning curve, but they can use those electronic billboard signs and what have you. You already see them on interstates, fender bender, pull off. And this is just for temporarily on I-66. It sunsets when the project's over, and that's what the bill does. It's a way of moving traffic.
So I just will say this, I was getting kind of tickled as you were explaining that you have to give them signs and all this other stuff. But I know that we're slow my way, but we'll drive home before we sit in the road and get run over again. So it's one of those things that, you think that people would take advantage of instead of.
The problem when I've talked to people, it's people are trained, oh my God, I've been in an accident. Don't leave until the police get here. And there's just, it's not really an accident. It is a thing that the police won't even investigate. And yet they could take 10, 15 minutes while they're writing stuff down, looking for pens. It won't occur to most people to just take a picture of the person and their license plate and, you're covered. It won't occur to them to do that. And writing that law would be impossible. So, just getting them off the highways as quickly as possible is going to improve our state's economy.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Cosgrove.
$20. $20 in Northern Virginia? I mean, really?
Okay. That was, a traffic fine. I don't have, I'm absolutely agnostic on the level of the fine, but some people they're going to misinterpret the signs. They're going to not understand. They're going to be scared. They're going to be. I don't want to hit people with a hard fine. I just want to get the information out there on the road and get them moving again. I'm not interested in collecting a lot of money, But I understand your point, but
Okay, thanks.
All right. Any other questions? Senator Favola. It's been moved and seconded to report the bill. All in favor say aye, or vote aye. I know.
That's for you, Senator Cosgrove.
9 ayes, 0 nays, 1 abstention.
Yeah. Look forward to you explaining that one on the floor.
Well, it'll be fun. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. I think that completes the calendar, right? Are we good? So as I said at the beginning, we have about 60-some bills. Well, we had. Yeah, we're probably down. We're probably down to 20. So about this many each time. So next week we're going to take up the 2 that we heard today and try to move them out as quick as possible. And then we have I think Senator DeSteph, Senator Cosgrove, Senator McPike, and one other has a series of bills that are addressing some auto dealers' issues that we're going to try to take in a block to hear them all at one time so that everybody that wants to testify to them will have an opportunity to do that next week. So we'll try to keep the docket moving as quickly as possible. And so we're going to take some of those controversial issues up next week. So I appreciate everybody getting here on time so we can get them moving, and we're adjourned.